¿Cuál es el muñeco moreno?
Este.
¿Y cuál es el muñeco blanco?
Este.
¿Cuál muñeco es bonito? ¿Cuál muñeco es feo? ¿Cuál muñeco es malo?
Ninguno.
¿Cuál muñeco es malo?
Este.
¿Y por qué?
Porque, bueno, este es moreno y este es blanco.
¿Cuál muñeco es feo? ¿Por qué?
Porque a mí no me gusta el color café.
¿Cuál muñeco te gusta más?
Este.
¿Cuál muñeco es bueno?
Este.
¿Y por qué?
Porque no me dan miedo los güeros porque tengo más confianza con si un poco más así como este. No tengo mucha confianza.
That intro was crazy. But it's nothing new. And I don't blame those kids for being taught something that they never should have learned in the first place. But those are future adults. And what they just showed you is the reality that hating black people is a universal language that everybody speaks. This white supremacy mindset is like a virus. And that thing's so strong, it even spreads to the minds of the people who look like me. And as of right now, we ain't found a cure for it.
As for what I was told in the home behind closed doors when I was growing up, that's not the most fun trip down memory lane, but I always like to be honest about acknowledging anti-Blackness among Asian Americans, especially when the call is coming from my own house, so here we go. I first became aware of my mom's anti-Blackness when I started kindergarten, and it mostly centered around avoiding interactions with Black people and not allowing me to be exposed to anything that she considered Black culture. So if we were walking and she saw a Black person, she would pull me closer to her. If we were in the car in a parking lot and saw a Black person in the parking lot, she would make a point to lock the doors. And I wasn't allowed to listen to rap or Michael Jackson or Tina Turner. And she was hypocritical about that because I wasn't allowed to listen to Cyndi Lauper or Madonna either. She would call it trash music and say that it was going to be a bad influence. But if it was a white artist, it was not racialized. It was only when it was Black artists that it was racialized. And another thing that I think is kind of typical is as a musician, there were a lot of Black artists whom she respected and enjoyed, but she would always say that one Black artist is the exception, the rest are bad influences.
You see that a lot when it comes to our community. Like different rules apply for being Black that doesn't apply to anybody else. Here's what I mean. The Black doctor for us is the exception. The Black scholar is the exception. The Black lawyer, the Black father is the exception in our community, right? But in other races, they take their top achievers in whatever category, name anyone you want to. They hold them up, and for that race, that person becomes the rule.
When I went to school, if I came home and said I made a friend, her first question would be white or Black. And that drove me nuts because in preschool, I dealt with a lot of bullying and discrimination because of being Asian. So it didn't make sense to me that she wanted me to turn around and do that very same thing to my Black classmates whom she knew nothing about on the basis of their skin color. And when I wouldn't stay away from my Black friends, she would resort to making up justifications as to why it was harmful for me. She would say they're going to hurt me and they're going to be a bad influence because they fight and they swear and they're not good students. And of course, none of that was true. And in my household, it was not physically or emotionally safe to voice your opinions, but about that I would because it literally angered me. And then she would resort to physical violence. And that sealed the deal in my mind that prejudice is purely irrational because none of her claims had any basis in reality, and that's why she had to resort to physical force.
She said something important right there, and I hope you caught it. She said her mom was telling her one thing, and the only thing that stopped her from believing it was because she was around Black people every day. Now, this is where dudes like Charlie Kirk, dudes like Myron, the Hodge twins, Anton Daniels, Candace Owens, Jesse Lee Peterson. This is where they become dangerous. They become dangerous because they're spewing ideas to people who don't encounter Black people all the time. Now, situations that would have just been a normal encounter, they turn deadly. This is why police officers who don't regularly be around Black people, this is why they approach us in an aggressive manner. Because buffoons like these dudes is brainwashing them to think a certain way about us. And if you don't encounter Black people on the regular, your mind is being filled with ideas that aren't actually true.
After that, we were walking in the mall, and my mom did this thing that she often did, which is she sees Black people minding their own business, and under her breath, she mumbles a derogatory term in Chinese for Black people. And I remember I pulled back on her hand and faced her, and I said, "They are not doing anything. You don't know them. The next time you do that, I am going to go up to them and I'm going to tell them what you said." And believe it or not, the fear of exposure by me actually made her tone it down, and she stopped doing that in public. Fortunately, my mom did not live and die that way. In later years, she came around to seeing and later openly admitting how wrong she was. In her older age, one of her best friends really was Black, and my mom admitted to her friend what her previous attitudes had been and why. And from those conversations, I was able to gain some insight as to what my mom's motivation was for her anti-Blackness. Because I think most people feel, since Asian Americans also are harmed by white supremacy, how does it make any sense for Asian Americans to be anti-Black?
You see what happened when her mom actually got to know somebody that was Black? It's simple. We ain't bothering nobody at a higher rate than anybody else. If anything, we a danger to ourselves, and we need to get that fixed within our community. I'm telling you this right now, dear white people, we ain't your problem. Y'all better be worried about Russia. Y'all better be worried about China. It's countries trying to overthrow y'all power. Y'all need to be focusing y'all attention and energy on that, because we ain't your problem. And then on another note, she hit the nail right on the head. If you're any other race, why would you support white supremacy when that means they have supremacy over your race too?
My mom spent most of her young life in Hong Kong when it was under British occupation, and then in the 1950s, she came to the United States when she was 16 years old. Generations before my mom, her family had been living in and doing business around Shanghai, Hong Kong, and Macau, which were French, British, and Portuguese occupied areas. So she was heavily indoctrinated into anti-Blackness in Hong Kong, where she had no exposure to Black people that would have shown her a different reality. And furthermore, what she was indoctrinated into is the idea that an Asian can elevate their status in white spaces by aligning with white supremacy, which includes aligning with anti-Blackness. So I think what my mom was doing with me is that from a young age, she saw that I was having a hard time as an Asian American assimilating. So she felt that if I associated with Black classmates, that would make assimilating into white spaces even harder. And she was concerned that associating with Black classmates would negatively impact my status in white spaces.
See, that's the reality of a lot of what you see what's happening. People want acceptance by white people so bad that they'll do anything to get it, even if that means throwing their own race under the bus.
My dad grew up in Taiwan, where he had no exposure to Black people, but he also had very little exposure to Western media. I think when he came to the United States, he was a bit uncertain around Black people because of the lack of familiarity and the slight media bias, but it only took a very little being around Black people to see that prejudice is irrational and that it serves a white supremacist agenda that he doesn't want to uphold.
It's a lot of people out there trying to paint us in a negative light, but it's a lot of channels like this one that's pushing back on that narrative. That's why it's important y'all keep liking, y'all keep commenting, y'all keep sharing, y'all keep subscribing. Because like my dog Don said, their truth ain't our truth.